Today's topic is called Being Future Relevant, and this is based on a talk that Ramanand, gave a few weeks ago to a group of people. And so that got me thinking about what being future relevant really is, though we've been talking about it, I choose to think for a while. How do I translate that to a group of people who are probably hearing this phrase for the first time? And that also gave me an opportunity to look back and think about how I navigated some of the transitions that I encountered over the last couple of decades. So while this is a personal opinion, we share a lot of this, I choose to think, and I thought I'll get some of my colleagues to also help me unpack this a little bit. So welcome everyone. We have Harish, we have Ankita, Omkar, Yarguddi, and Sanasi today with us. Hi everyone.
Hi.
Hi, Ramanand.
Hi Omkar.
Hi.
Okay, cool. We're all here and in good voice. So let's begin. So I'd like to take all of you back 7 years. It was 2013 and I had a decision to make. And this was the decision point. I was an applied researcher and I had some background in the world of research and software development. And there were certain reasons because of which I was contemplating a change. But change to what? And how should I think about it? So I spent a couple of months trying to ponder over this career decision of whether to continue where I was working, whether to switch to some other place and do something very similar in the world of applied research, or to completely change tracks. So between 2013 and today, in October 2020, where we are, a lot of things have happened. So how did I make this decision? How did things get to 2020? And I'm still in one piece, and I have made a certain set of decisions. So when I look back, I realized that a lot of this was enabled by a parallel timeline. So contrasting this so-called professional timeline was this timeline of interests, personal development, personal changes. Uh, I was into quizzing. I happened to win a competition which was televised called Mastermind India. I had a couple of decades of daily reading under my belt. I got interested in topics like building innovation culture, in discerning mental models and applying them in a wide variety of spheres. I had some personal highlights as well. I got married to someone who's quite smart. And those are the things that helped me, along with everything I had done on the professional side, to choose to think as it stands today. So in just a few months after 2013, after that decision was made, Harish and I, we started Choose to Think. And at first, it was a collection of attempts to put together whatever we were good at. So there is this famous Venn diagram that most of us are familiar with, which tries to guide you into thinking about your life and your work as a series of overlapping circles of what you're good at, what you're interested in doing, what society will pay you for, and also society's needs and how that fit into what you can offer. So frameworks and mental models like that uh, help guide these decisions. And Choose to Think has evolved from doing innovation consulting to quizzing. And today we are here talking about future relevance because we believe that a lot of these things can help people be very deliberate about leveling up, about assuring their future relevance. And the way we have thought about it is that uh, today's relevance is taken care of by wherever you work. So there is a task list, a supervisor, a company that propels you forward. There is also tomorrow's relevance, which is what are the skills that you need to add to your immediate skill set. So your learning and development department may guide you there. You may hear about certifications from your peers. There are courses all over the place today. But there is a world beyond that. And I think 2020, a lot of us have realized that the world can suddenly change. And we need to also spend some time thinking about the day after tomorrow, because we don't really know what is going to come day after tomorrow, and therefore it makes sense to prepare for a wide variety of worlds, and that's where future relevance comes in, according to us, I choose to think. So what I did in my talk was to first try and unpack what future relevance is for an individual, and after I speak about this, I'm going to invite my colleagues to also chime in. So to me, from an individual lens, uh, first and foremost, the goal is to survive in whatever new world you find yourself in. You may stumble, you may face a lot of challenges, you may even face opportunities, but the first goal is to ensure you're in a position to survive. And then you can think about flourishing. uh, at the same time, you don't want to be at the mercy of others. You want to have some say, some agency in what you do. So, doing the things you would like to do is as important a part of future relevance. And yes, getting remunerated for them. There is a little bit of a fine print there, because to each of us, remuneration is different. For some of us, it is money. For some of us, it is satisfaction. For some of us, it is helping someone else achieve their goals. So there are different definitions. You want to be in a position where you get compensated or remunerated in the way you hold dear. And I think we have seen this throughout history, wherein people, idea of remuneration changes. Initially it could be about money or about status, and then they want to give back to society, and then it changes to what they offer and how many people's lives they have touched. So different people may evolve this idea of remuneration differently, but the goal here again is to maintain that agency. And unlike in previous generations, we believe that uh, given the length of lifespans and career spans, this is going to be in a rinse and repeat mode. Gone are the days where you spent all your time in one organization and did their bidding, and you essentially gave them the responsibility of maintaining your future relevance, and you really didn't take charge of that yourself. But things have changed, and more individuals are taking this into their hands. So, Harish, would you add anything to my list of future relevance for individuals?
So I was saying that I think the most important thing that you've added there is the letter S to world, because that's the most important thing about considering multiple futures and multiple worlds, and not just the one that you think is most amenable to what you are doing, and most favorable to where you are right now. And that's the mistake that most people make, where they are doing more of wishful thinking than really looking at all the possibilities that are there, and preparing for all the different worlds. So that world's word is extremely important for me whenever we think of future relevance.
Yeah, in fact, I borrowed this from one of the interviews that you did, and it almost seems to me like being an astronaut, right? You are out there and you're constantly. It reminds me of Interstellar almost sometimes, when you're looking for these other worlds to populate. And you're also going there with a sense that they may not work out for you, but there's no point in not trying. Sanasi, would you add anything, or did anything strike you in this list?
No, I think it's very spot on. There's also a present day element to future relevance, which I think was is something that keeps coming back to me, which is that the more you become tightly coupled in your present situation, you make it more difficult for yourself to be in a position to do all these things. So something which is connected to the present also, which is how you can craft your present in a way that this is possible in the future.
Correct, right. So all these dots are connected. The paragraph of the future is connected to the paragraph of today, and in some sense, today is what enables you to build that foundation for tomorrow. So you're absolutely right. In fact, I think one thumb rule that we would suggest to all our listeners is that on a day-to-day basis, it can be hard to find time to think and plan and execute on your future relevance, but see if you can spare something like 1% of your day or 1% of your week in these pursuits. So let's move on to how we should think about future relevance, and this is something that Choose to Think has on its website as well. So there are three components. One is thinking about what will be valuable in the future. So everything from trends, everything from changes in the environment, they always shift the sands of value. So it's always important to think about what will be relevant in the future in terms of providing value, because 20 years ago we would not be doing what we are doing right now, and this is a way for us to deliver value. So things keep changing. The second is that once you've identified this, are you in a position to deliver value in the future? So a lot of people in 2020 have figured out that uh, you know uh, they couldn't deliver value in a digital world. They were so tightly coupled to that physical world that even though they could identify what is of value, they struggled to uh, change to be able to deliver that. And no one can be perfect. There will be some scenarios in which you will find yourself short of that capability, but how do you quickly move to close that gap? And finally, there is also a perception aspect to future relevance. So uh, think about a cricketer who is like Sachin Tendulkar. 10 or 13 years ago, when the first IPL edition came along, uh, he was on the cusp of his or the sunset stage of his career, but he was still very relevant in some sense to the younger generation, the first time viewers of T20 cricket, because of all the legacy that he had. So, and there are some cricketers who kind of faded away because they couldn't fit into that format. Uh, so there is a capability angle, but there's also a perception angle which can come into play. So I had 5 recommendations to my audience in that talk, and this is where I'm also going to ask a few of our pet questions. So my first question, and I'm going to ask Omkar to try and guess this. All these questions, the answer is a person or an entity. So I was born in a cubicle. My creator worked at Pacific Bell. He had multiple interests. One led to me. One of my first appearances was on his whiteboard. To name me, he ran a context. Who am I? Omkar.
Well, I don't know. I think this is the computer mouse or something along those lines.
No, this is a character. This is a fictional character. So think about who could appear on a white.
Oh, this is Dilbert by Scott Adams then.
That's correct. Well done, Omkar. This is Dilbert. So this creator is Scott Adams, who was a office manager worker, but he was also interested in cartooning along the way, and that gave birth to Dilbert. So one concept that we have learned from the writings of Scott Adams is the idea of a talent stack. So Scott Adams says that it is extremely hard to be number one in one particular area, but the advantages of being number one are that all the riches in the world go to you. So if you're the top violinist in the world, you will get an order of magnitude more rewards than maybe the next few guys behind you. So instead, what Scott Adams tells us mere mortals is that it is better to add a collection of talents in which you are in, say, in the top 20 or top 25% in the world. That combination becomes very powerful, almost unique, and that can give you a source of strength and relevance that uh, pursuing one single talent obsessively may never do. Because if you end up being in the top 10, it's still not as good as being top one, and it's also incredibly hard to do that. So for instance, Scott Adams' own talent stack, what he credits to his success as uh, someone who's created a cartoon without really being a great cartoonist or a great illustrator, or without really having a lot of background in publishing. So he says that this is a combination that has helped him. So he took a course in public speaking, he learned about psychology, he learned about persuasion and hypnosis, he learned about writing very formally, he learned accounting. And as he became an entrepreneur and as Dilbert went on to spawn off merchandise and get into books and so on, it became important for him to know the basics of entrepreneurship, and that's where the accounting part came in. He talks about overcoming shyness, and if you see him on social media these days, it's very hard to believe that here is a very shy person. He speaks about golf because that is where a lot of business deals are struck, and so on. So what he advises everyone is to kind of think about your talent stack and keep adding to it. And I thought it was very valid advice because uh, it's very I'm a kind of a person who has accumulated some elements of a talent stack, sometimes unknowingly, and in more recent times more knowingly. So I can do a little bit of everything. So you can think of me as a jack of all trades or a T-shaped person, depending on where you come from. But it really helps that I have some basics of writing, some basics of design. We have read a lot of books that have taught us a little bit about persuasion. And if you're still not in that top 20%, our goal is to keep getting better at it. So my tip to a lot of people that day was to use a formal strengths finder mechanism. There is one from Gallup, there is one from uh, you know uh, VIA strengths finder. So all of these can really help you understand your strengths, and while you assemble your talent stack, you can also pair up or team up with people who have complementary skills, and together you become a very a, pow- a powerful team. So just like you have a talent stack as an individual, you can also have a talent stack as a team. So Ankita, when you look at the kind of work that Choose to Think does, uh, what else do you think we have in our talent stack? Uh, Here is Scott Adams' list, or what else do you think we should add to our talent stack?
Well, I think a lot of things are covered here, but probably technology, we are trying to get into it a bit more. So probably that. Um, yeah.
Okay. And Harish, would you add anything to this?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So one thing that I would change in Scott Adams' list is probably consider running instead of golf these days. And but yeah, I get why he talks about golf, because that's where all the business deals used to be, fixed and cracked. But I guess these days it's more of running. But if you look at it, running is still the same, has the same elements as golf had, which was a secondary interest, which was in the space of sports and games and hobbies for these people. So running these days becomes like a networking opportunity, which not many of us actively do. Probably that's something which we should do more of. One thing that is not there in this list, which I think we are quite good at, is thinking about engagement. When we look at anything, and there are elements of engagement, I'm sure that he would have considered in things like business writing and public speaking, where essentially you're talking about how the message is going to be taken by the audience and what impact you are planning to have on the audience. But just thinking about the audience, figuring out what is the message that you want people to leave with. And the second one that is not there in this list that we are quite good at is designing systems and habits. He does talk about system thinking, but designing habits, again, we've probably picked a lot from Scott Adams himself, but it's not there in this list. So I thought I'd just mention that. But designing habits for individuals and for groups, I think it's a great way of making sure that you're progressing towards building this talent stack that you're talking about, because otherwise it could seem like an overwhelming goal that suddenly you need to build all these things, and that could derail you. Which is why if you can build these systems and build these habits over a period of time, you'll get to this stage where you have this multifaceted element to yourself or to the team itself.
Yeah, especially I think reading is also missing. Like when we're talking about habits, that's something that we do I choose to think regularly and get other people to do that as well. So yeah. That is also missing.
Right. Thank you. Uh, in fact, I just wanted to add that 7 years ago, if we looked at our talent stack, we didn't have this ability to design systems for others, or even if we did that for ourselves, it may not have had a lot of deliberateness around it. So that has definitely changed when I look at the last 7 years. All right, so I'm going ahead to my second recommendation, but before that, a question, and this one will go to Sanasi. So identify me. According to my silly brother, I am the British government, and I have the tidiest and most orderly brain with the greatest capacity for storing facts of any man living. So who am I?
This is one of the fascinating characters. Mycroft Holmes is my answer.
That's absolutely correct, Sanasi. Well done. So the second point that Sherlock Holmes and Mycroft Holmes for me somehow represent is this idea of fluid versus crystallized intelligence. In fact, one of our earlier talks was about, uh, I think Ankita will definitely remember, is about an article about staying relevant. And the author of that article had called out this fluid versus crystallized intelligence. So, what is this? So, fluid intelligence is when your brain is able to react to novel situations. You may not have seen a problem before, but you're able to creatively come up with a solution that you did not have earlier. Whereas crystallized intelligence is something that builds on your existing knowledge. You've seen a lot of patterns in the past, and uh, a lot of this is timeless. So, what this theory suggests is that as people age, uh, fluid intelligence, the balance of fluid versus crystallized, it goes in favor of crystallized. So when you're young, you're able to react very swiftly, come up with these very novel sorts of connections that lead to breakthrough innovations, inventions, and ideas. But over time, that part of it gives way to another kind of intelligence. And as you age, or as you look at a timeline, perhaps it is better to give yourself a chance on the crystallized intelligence side and not rely entirely on fluid intelligence. So uh, you might be a hotshot programmer or a very strong kind of a analytical thinker when you are young, but over time that may have to give way to a more thoughtful. Maybe you won't be the fastest programmer, and you may take your time to crack open a new problem, but you're building on a reserve of experience, in a sense that Mycroft was. So Sherlock was the active go-getter. You could give him a completely new problem and he'd figure it out, but Mycroft had the web of information at his fingertips. So both those types of intelligences are very relevant, and we should learn to kind of use both of their advantages over time. So one recommendation that I had for people was that to build on your crystallized intelligence is to identify what you can teach, because teaching relies a lot on crystallized intelligence, especially in very timeless kinds of fields. So if you're teaching something like helping people to write better, design better from first principles, that is something that is likely to be relevant for a long time, even if you have a program somewhere which will suggest um, the next word, the stylistic choice. Knowing some of these from first principles over time and a lot of experience of reading, consuming information, seeing designs is all in the crystallized intelligence bucket. And if you can teach something really well, the chances that you will have something to offer, not just to your immediate peers, but to a younger generation, becomes very high, and that gives you a chance to be more relevant. So, Omkar, what would you say about this? Is there anything that you think you could teach, say, over time, and you can build a reserve of knowledge around a particular topic? What would that be for you?
So when I'm asked the question, the first thing that comes to mind is appreciating music. It is a major part and parcel of my everyday life. I can't imagine sitting down to work without some sort of music, some form of music playing in the background. And I think over time, having listened to a lot of music, the analogy you were drawing with reading and writing, how you learn to spot patterns, how you learn to appreciate some of the finer nuances of the craft. That is what has happened over time with various performances, various recordings, various genres of music that I've been exposed to. So that is something I feel I might be able to teach others. Wonder how wonder how interesting it might be for some new entrant, new hotshot to the world of music appreciation. But yeah, that is something I can do right now. Over time, I might be able to gather some insight, develop some sort of an expertise on procrastination.
Okay. All right. And Sanasi, what would you say, we would be good at teaching as a company in the years to come?
I think being deliberate is what I think we are, crystallizing towards, because we are slowly building up that ability to tell others how to build systems and how to organize your goals and your intentions is something we are building towards as we go along.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead to our third point. And I didn't hurriedly add this while Harish was talking about systems and habits. So this is the other major thing that we have got from the likes of Scott Adams, and we have been trying to practice this very seriously, especially in the last 3-4 years. Uh, so, the simple idea is that don't orient yourself to specific goals, because uh, it becomes a binary result. Either you reach the goal or you don't. Some people find goals very, very motivating, but over time, it's easier to systematize things such that you are creating something that you can do very regularly, almost every day. And the big things in life often fall better into systems than to goals. And where it fits into future relevance is that it's very hard to pick one goal with respect to the future, because things do change all the time. So it is better to give yourself a set of wheels, and these systems are a set of wheels that over time they actually become more and more smooth, and they give you the agility, the ability to spread yourself over a wider area. So systematic curiosity and wisdom opens your world. It answers the first couple of questions, like what is going to be valuable, how do I stay give myself the capability of being valuable. Things like health and wealth and happiness, they set the foundation for you to suddenly be agile in the future. So Harish, I know you've often talked about something called as H2W2. So I've briefly alluded that to on the screen, but can you tell us a little more about that from a system building perspective and future relevance perspective?
Yeah. So H2W2 is something that I picked up from someone that I know, who actually tries to track his life in these four buckets, which are health, happiness, wealth, and work. So he looks at how he's doing on different fronts, and there's different cadence for doing different things in each of these four quadrants. For example, you may not want to spend too much time worrying about how your personal finance and wealth is going every day. Maybe that's something which you do once a month or once a quarter or something like that, but you definitely need to keep an eye on that. Health maybe is something that you do on multiple fronts: diet and exercise and mental health as well. Happiness on the on the lines of how much time you are spending with people who are close to you, and what gives you personal happiness. It could be reading for the sake of joy, or pursuing a hobby or a passion, or anything like that. And work is one of the four quadrants. So if you look at that the distribution, usually what ends up happening is work ends up taking a huge chunk of your daily life, right? So if you actually start looking at your day in these four quadrants, and look at what are the things which can probably address multiple multiple requirements and multiple quadrants, then it becomes much easier to actually try and do as much as you can in the same 24 hours that everyone has. If you try to break that into very clearly demarcated, quadrants and slots where you say, okay, when I'm doing this work, I'm not going to do anything else, or whatever I do on the on the health side is not something which is also going to address my happiness question. I think that's where then you run into the trouble of not finding enough time to do whatever you want to do, and then you start worrying about work-life balance and all these things. The human is the same, right? Who's addressing all of these. So if you look at how each of these areas is contributing to you as a person as a whole, then it makes things much easier, and you can then look at creating again the right kind of systems to make sure you are addressing each of these things. It also has echoes of what Marshall Goldsmith talks about in his book Rituals and sorry, not rituals, triggers, about maintaining a daily checklist. Also, the phrasing of what he has, where he talks about, did you do your best to do X, Y, Z? I think makes a big difference in looking at this in such a way that it doesn't lead to more dissatisfaction. Like you said, the big thing with system versus goals is goal will always be in a state of not being completed majority of the time. There's going to be one fleeting moment when the goal is complete, and after that there is emptiness. So actually the happiness that you're talking about is there for that one fleeting second, probably, when you achieve that. So till that time you are either short of the goal, and once the goal is achieved, then there's nothing, which is why systems score over goals. So you don't want these systems to actually work like goals, where you're getting worried about, oh, have I completed these things, have I done these things or not, which is why designing these systems, being very deliberate about it, seeing how many different vectors, for want of a better word, can be addressed using this system, I think it helps a lot.
Absolutely. In fact, what Marshall Goldsmith said, we could even say that what having a good system does is enables you to give your best in the few areas that you absolutely need to pay attention to. The rest just happens because you've designed a really well-oiled machine to take you forward. So thanks, Harish. So my recommendation that day was to invest in habits. We've already spoken about that. Sanasi also mentioned it in the previous section. So figure out a way to invest in these habits, learn about habit building, come and talk to us, because I think this is what creates that platform that can take you into the future. The fourth recommendation is embracing the human side, and I had this partly because I was addressing a group of data analysts. So this is what I mean by the human side. While a lot of the world is being powered by data and technology, there is still a big role of emotions, psychology, storytelling, empathy, creativity, all those fuzzy, hard to define, uh, hard to pin down sides of the human story. So because all of us are going to still be selling to customers, trying to delight users, trying to make our friends and family think, or influence them in a particular way, or make them think of us as the people that we want to be seen as. So, and plus we ourselves are, we cannot divorce the human side from whatever we do. So understanding the human side of the world is something that has come into vogue in the last decade. There have been some great books written. Things are coming out of the academic realm into more, you know, simply packaged or better to understand kinds of books and articles and people. So embracing this also makes, because there are these opinion pieces that say that in the future, as more things get automated, or things like machine learning can come in and pick up some of the more mundane tasks, what you're left with is things that are going to be very complex, need a lot of interpretation of context, and also need very rapid feedback. Those are the kinds of jobs that will be in some sense AI proof. So a classic example that is cited is that of nursing. So if you're nursing, you're helping someone recover or deal with a particular ailment. It is very contextual. You have to read them very quickly. You have to pay attention to what is going on around you in your surrounding. You take very quick decisions, and you have to be able to connect with them as a human. So all this requires us embracing our human side. So one tip I had for people was to read books like these, some favorites that we have that we often recommend to people. So Ankita, do you have anything to add to this list of the human side, or do you have a book or some resource that we should recommend people to check out?
Can't think of anything right now. Sorry. You can check out basically book summaries of these different books, and then decide which book you'd like to go ahead with, because these can be quite heavy to go through at the first go. So it's a good idea to have a sneak peek first before you decide which book you'd like to go ahead with. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, that's a valid point. Sanasi, what would you add to this? Because you have been a student of psychology.
Right. So I would definitely say pick up a college book of social psychology, a college textbook. When we were studying it, we didn't realize that this would become so important going ahead. But looking back, almost every theory, every model that comes out is based on the shoulders of these social research that happened a few decades ago, and it's interesting also, and it's definitely, you'll find that it's easy to read and it's very relevant to you. So a social psychology textbook is what I can even recommend the authors. So I think it's Byron and Byrne, which is a nice social a psychology textbook, which is easy for anyone to pick up and read. So that would be.
Correct, right. Omkar, I don't know to the extent to which you read fiction, but I know people have recommended fiction as a way of embracing the human side. Any comments on that?
I do read a lot of fiction, and it so happens that I'm currently reading a couple of fiction books by P.G. Wodehouse. And looking at what you already have on the screen, what you already have on the slide, fiction does tick off a lot of those elements. It gets you emotionally hooked, because unless you care for the characters, you don't really stick to the end of the story. It makes very clever use of human psychology by creating things like curiosity gaps while making you ponder what is going to happen next. Why did a particular character behave in a certain way? And it makes you feel incredibly hooked into the story, just to be able to find out what's happening on the next page. The way some of these fiction books are uh, characterized as unputdownable, that shows a great mastery over the craft of using psychology. Perhaps it is deliberate, perhaps it is not for a given author, but it definitely taps into that. And naturally, that is where storytelling really flourishes as an art. All of these elements that you've listed down feature very prominently when it comes to something like fiction. And to add to your tip, books like Thinking Fast and Slow, Decisive, or Alchemy also make good use of all of these things. They may not have the same kind of stories or the same kind of character building and world building, but they employ it in whatever fashion they can, while also trying to tell a story. Chip and Dan Heath do it to great effect in Mid to Stick and Decisive, where they illustrate their points with small stories, small relevant stories. Alchemy, as we know, does that quite well. Rory Sutherland himself is a master storyteller, and he's got a great grasp of humor. He's got a great grasp of human psychology and behavior. So all of these things come together to create something magical in the world of fiction. There's no reason why we can't look to that different domain so that we can pick up a few things and apply to what we are trying to do.
Correct, right. And before we move away from this slide, I wanted to ask Harish, one thing about Choose to Think has been, we haven't done a lot of work on data, or we don't have a tech product to sell, at least yet. So, and these have been the dominant strains of entrepreneurship in the last 5 years that we have also been around. So what explains this sort of almost contrarian way of looking at the world, and do you think, is it a strength or a weakness for Choose to Think?
So, I was actually thinking about this even when Omkar was talking about, these books. So not just these books, but if you look at other authors like Malcolm Gladwell and Steve Brothers and Tim Harford, all these people who are talking about a lot of, these current trends, they all have a great way of storytelling. And the reason why I was riffing on that before addressing your question was that eventually it is all boiling down to the same human beings, human emotions, and the kind of things that you have listed down in this slide, right? It is about the human side. So whatever these the tech startups and data science, things based on data science and all are built on, they need to eventually address a human need. And only if that need or want is being addressed is when they actually make money, right? So what we have managed to do till now, at least, is address those needs in a very effective manner. We have used some platforms like no code or low code, if there is such thing, but we've definitely used technology as an aid in whatever way possible to either make our jobs easier to deliver something to our customers, or in some cases directly being exposed to the end user slash customer as well. So I wouldn't say we have not used technology or data science at all. Most of what we have done has been in the realm of high value to a smaller group of people, rather than something which is very mass, and which is where you will get a lot of user data, which you can then use effectively, using data science and do something else as well, right? So using technology as an aid or as a means has always been our approach, and that's what has worked for us. That's how it should be, in my opinion. The reason or the time when you actually start thinking of this as the end, where you're trying to build a cool product simply because the technology is there, is where I think you'll lose sight of the actual need or want in the market that you are trying to address. It may seem like a great use case of a particular piece of code or a paper, but in my opinion will not stand the test of time. So yeah, which doesn't mean that we are close to the idea of using technology or data science. If and when that need comes up in the areas of our work, I think we should be able to address that and embrace that quite well.
Correct. So I think standing the test of time is what future relevance is all about, and I think we do believe that the human side is going to be a critical part there. So our last section, or a last question before that, I will throw this to Harish. So who am I if I had trouble deciding to, just like Ramanand, but in a different question? So this list, I drew up this list to try and decide whether I should marry or not. So who am I? And here is a helpful hint just to help you get to the answer. So Harish, who am I?
So this has to be Charles Darwin.
That's absolutely right. So even someone like Charles Darwin, who was undeniably smart, but he had these decisions to make himself, and he went about in this methodical sort of manner. And the reason I pulled up Charles Darwin is not because he's a famous scientist and one of the most famous people of the last 200 years, but because I think that a topic like evolution can teach us a lot about being relevant in the future. And the reason is evolution is something that explains why the world is currently the way it is. There was no grand scheme, there is no goal, but there is a series of interesting actions, random events, mistakes, interesting failures that and cross connections that can lead to in some cases better things, and in some cases things that stand the test of time. So everything that we have looked at so far, be it surviving, be it being valuable in a certain environment, a lot of it can be learned from evolution. So the power of randomness, what makes an organism or a species survive for long, the power of cross pollination when you have ideas mixing from two different domains, the role of diversity, which is now a hot topic in corporate culture, uh, even things like game theory, which a lot of evolution actually is built around competing constraints and how species and organisms deal with that. So I think there are great lessons for us from the world of evolution. We aren't a lot of us aren't really been taught these lessons in great depth when we were students, but I think everyone should take a cue from this. And some of the books that we have read in our reading compound, they have often talked about the role of evolution in society, the role of evolution in biology, of course. Someone like Rory Sutherland, who wrote Alchemy, has talked about how you can take lessons from that and apply it to marketing and advertising. So my tip, just to expand on this, was look at the past and look at history, look at biographies, look at evolution. Add all of these to your curiosity diet. And Harish, I'd like to ask you, how should people choose biographies when they add this to their curiosity diet?
So, I have, some very strong opinions on this. So thanks for, calling me to answer this. These days what is happening is, biographies of people that you appreciate and, you like may not actually do justice to what their life has always been like, right? So, one simple tip to follow here is to wait for some reviews of biographies to see whether the biography has actually been an honest account. A lot of times these days, it's more of a ghostwriter. I think ghostwriter is not the only challenge here. It's about how honest the person has been. If it's an autobiography, and if it's a biography, how much of an access has the biographer got to actually unearth the different things that went in the background, that defined that person and resulted in the kind of decisions that he took. I think that's very important. I've made this mistake of picking up books because I thought there was a lot to learn from a specific person, and yeah, the biographies and autobiographies didn't do any justice. And then when you look at it, it makes it's a sound business decision on their part, but not necessarily as a reader who's trying to do some vicarious learning from their life. So wait for some time for some reviews about how honest that account is before you pick up biographies. And when you do find a good biography, I think it doesn't matter which field it is from. It could be sports, it could be films, it could be politics, it could be scientists, it could be rulers from medieval times as well. But if it's been, if it's a good biographer or good writer who has done justice to the topic, I think any field is worth it in terms of picking up, because how many times are you actually going to see the entire life of someone, and whatever field they are from, they're going to be things that you can learn and apply in your own context. So if done well, I think biographies are a great source of learning. But yeah, be careful about which biographies you pick.
Right. Thanks, Harish. And I'm going to ask Ankita if our through the reading compound, some of these elements, right, learning from failure, cross-pollination, diversity, has that changed in any way the way you work or in the way you think about, some of the, the activities that we do as an individual or as a team? Take a specific example. You are our future fitness gym calls that we've had. Um, I think one thing that you have been exposed to was a lot of different kinds of people. We had authors, we've had technologists. So how has that experience shaped you, especially this year?
Yeah, because there are so many ideas, mental models, and things that I didn't realize that I needed to know. There's so much I didn't know, and I got to know what I don't know. So all these things actually helped me realize that there's a lot to learn yet, and it's a continuous process. And
Right.
yeah, so interacting with people, and like I'm generally a anxious person. Like I'm not very comfortable interacting with people, but all that got me started doing that. And uh, like uh, discussing ideas, and I got to know that a lot of people share the same sort of insights, and the takeaways from the articles. We have a similar way of thinking, different perspectives, but they all merge in a way, and that's kind of a great feeling. Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to pick up on what you said and ask Omkar the next question, which is, so Omkar, you, I, Harish, we all have been moderating some of our reading compound batches. And sometimes when the same article is, evokes different reactions from different people, tell me a little bit about your experiences there.
Well, more often than not, what ends up happening is the way I read an article, I have some sort of an idea of what I'm taking away from it when I read it. But when we see all of these people from different backgrounds, different life experiences coming together as part of a reading compound batch, it makes it a very interesting thing to see what resonates with whom. For instance, there was this one article on how to get rich by Jared Diamond that we'd shared as part of one of our reading compound batches, and it evoked a particularly strong reaction from one of the participants. And that made me do a double take and think of what I had missed and go back to the article just to see what was ticking this person off to such an extent. And I found that there was truth to what they had said, and what I had initially thought of as righteous indignation uh, was then modified to something with another label, something that said, here is a person who's had a different set of experiences and their opinions are just as valid as mine are. So it opens up a whole new set of points of views for me to take something away from.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Omkar. So I'm going to just move ahead. We're almost at the end. So here was the top 5 tips that I had. By no means is this an elaborate or an exhaustive list. I'm sure a lot of us could add a lot more to our future relevance stack. This is a bunch of models to think about this problem. But I had a bonus, and this question goes to Sanasi. So who am I? I'm describing my secret weapon during World War II. Which was the fact that I used to take a nap every afternoon, even during the height of the war. I even had a bed in the Parliament building, and I have a Nobel Prize in literature. So who am I?
This is a guess. So is it Winston Churchill?
You're absolutely right. And Winston Churchill famously loved his naps, his little siestas. And, in fact, even he had once said that I'm working with a lot of young people, and this is what keeps me fresh and keeps me young. So this was Winston Churchill's tip, right? And I've called it out as a zeroth kind of tip for future relevance. And I call it just get enough sleep. If there is something, if you don't do all the 1 to 5 that you looked at in the past, I would still say that something like sleep, which is so fundamental, we're actually, it ties to a different set of aspects of future relevance, because Why? Let me unpack that for you a little bit. So from a talent stack point of view, if you're going to be learning a lot of new things, and sleep has been shown to help you learn better, memorize better, recall better. Um, we talked about fluid and crystallized intelligence. To that, you want to have a basic state of health. Sleep plays a huge role in that. Systems over goals. We've seen that sleeping on time or getting the right amount of sleep can be a keystone habit. And what we mean by that is it's a habit that has a lot of positive repercussions on other habits you want to build. So, if you want to feel fresh and energetic in the morning, you want to go to sleep on time, which means that you are no longer indulging in certain habits that got you to sleep very late, and it has this cascading effect. So, sleep can play the role of a keystone habit. On the human side, you have to function well as a human. You don't want to be an irritable, dull, or annoyed kind of a human yourself first. So sleep gives you that rest. It gives you that literally that peace of mind. So that's how sleep can help you discover or foster your human side. And finally, from an evolution point of view, sleep is still one of those mysteries. I don't think there is a definitive theory of why sleep evolved in the way it did, especially for humans. Consider that 1/3 of your day you are vulnerable, and it could only have happened if you had certain amount of security around you as a group or and other such environmental reasons. And so sleep must be pretty important to us if we are sacrificing 1/3 of our day for that. So I think sleep ticks a lot of these boxes. So for final thoughts, I'm going to ask each one of you to tell me not how much you sleep in a day, but any other such basic kinds of things that you think people should introduce. It could be something very timeless, something seemingly underrated, seemingly mundane, which you would recommend to people listening to this smartcast, which will go a long way in keeping them future relevant. So I'm going to start with Sanasi.
Okay, so the first thing that came to mind was an advice that I got from one of my mentors long back, which was to keep a idea diary on you all the time. Have a pencil and a pocket diary with you at all times to note down anything that you think of or anything that you encounter, which I think he used to do it very regularly, and he was he managed to do a lot of things in his life. So I would recommend that. I don't do it, but I think it's a very useful tip to get.
All right. Thanks, Anasi. Ankita.
Uh, the two things that come to mind, one is reflection, because to be future fit, you need to uh, like reflect on the past and the present as well. So you know where you're going and what needs to be changed and where you need to up level. And second is like uh, join probably future fitness gym so that you get all these content and activities you get to do. So to stay future fit. Yeah.
Thanks, Ankita. Omkar, what would you add to this list?
I think I'm going to go back to what I talked about as an answer to one of your questions. Read, my dear Watson, read.
Okay.
And if you want to develop a good system around it, by all means, consider joining the CTQ reading compound, because you not only get to read every day and develop a system, but also find exposure to lots of other interesting topics, lots of other interesting viewpoints on, and something that you may not have considered yourself.
Right. And since you invoked Sherlock, I think one thing in the Sherlock stories that for Moriarty is that he is in the Diogenes Club, right, where you are prevented from speaking and people can read at length. Maybe one day we will turn our compounds into these havens for reading. But to the final word, I'm going to ask Harish to talk about this and also talk a little bit about our future stack, the thinking behind our future stack concept, Harish.
Yeah. So let me talk about future stack first, and then I have a slightly, probably surprising tip. So I'll talk about that later. So future stack is what we've started as, you can call it as a flavor of our compound, where we help people stay future relevant from a professional standpoint. So a lot of times there are these topics and themes that you think you should know more of. You should get your hands dirty with those topics, but they're just not part of your current work routine. So it sort of gets postponed to the next time when I have some time, right? And suddenly what happens is, without knowing, some of these areas may actually start having an impact on your present day career, and may have a very, very significant impact on your future as well. Which is why these topics, these themes, if you may, um, are extremely important to know more of. Uh, in some cases, knowing about these topics, and we're talking about some of these timeless topics like storytelling, persuasion, influence, learning, and also topics like artificial intelligence and gig economy, and sustainability, some of these so-called buzzwords, right? You know a little bit of, but you should definitely know more of, definitely know more perspectives on these topics, because they are, whether you like it or not, are having a significant direct impact on your life, on your career. So that's where something like Future Stack helps, because you again get to read and get to watch some of these videos on these topics, and learn about these things, and also reflect on how it is having an impact on your career. So that's something which we have started, I think around 12, 13 weeks ago, and people have started taking to it quite enthusiastically. And I'm personally quite happy to see the kind of breadth we have in terms of the subscribers of Future Stack, because at one end you have these mid managerial level people who are looking at professional relevance, and who have had quite a stable corporate career till now. I personally don't see any threat to their careers, but they see this as a way of addressing their future relevance. We also have people who are slightly more senior, who know they've probably missed the bus in terms of having directly played around with some of these topics, but know that as part of their secondary or tertiary careers, they should be knowing more about these things. So they're not in that, they're not working as much towards their future as probably almost their present, right? And we also have some of these fresh out of college kind of people who are who just entering their entering different workforces, and know that these are the kind of things that they now ought to know more of. So the spread that you have on Future Stack is, I think, something which is quite interesting as well. And coming back to the tips that I wanted to add, about thinking about future events. So I think we've covered everything from reading to joining the Future Fitness Gym, and all these idea journal and all great tips. Personally, something that I think is quite underrated and can do wonders is do something like gardening. So if you actually start growing plants, you can see future fitness in action at a much faster pace than seeing, say, a child grow, because you can see how a plant adapts to its surroundings. You can also see how it needs to be nurtured from time to time. Of course, if you're talking of potted plants in the on your windowsill or on your terrace, then you need some nourishment from the human as well. But you can actually see how it adapts, right? And that's what you are also trying to bring into your life, where you are trying to add these different nutrients which are in the form of reading, or all these other things that we talked about, and make sure that you survive and thrive in whatever future world that you are in. So whether you are on the windowsill with the sun beating down on you, or you are inside the room, or on the terrace where it's raining quite heavily, you need to survive all those worlds. So a plant does a great job of adapting, and you can see everything that we talked about in action. So see if you can actually grow a plant.
All right. On that very green note, let us bring this to an end. Thank you very much, Harish, Ankita, Omkar, and Sanasi. It was great talking to all of you about future relevance. And I think we'll do another edition of this in, say, 5 years' time and see what we've changed our thinking about. Thank you, everyone. See you soon. Bye.